Hi and welcome to Property People. I'm here today with Mr. Brendan Quinn. Hi, Brendan.
Hi. Thanks for introducing myself or briefly mentioning my name. I'm delighted to be here today in this beautiful sunshine in February. So huge thanks for joining myself and or me joining you. I'm so used
You're used to
of the other way around.
being round, so you're actually getting into it. But allow me this time to be the one that introduces you, Brendan, because you are the guy that interviews everybody else, and I thought it would be a good idea. This is all about property people, and you're certainly a property person, and you are the person behind a lot of the people that get a platform and get pushed to the forefront of the property industry. And I thought it would be a great opportunity to have an opportunity to get you out there as well and allow everybody to hear your story. So Brendan, everybody, is one of the pioneers of the property networking community. He's famously been running some of the best property events all over London for the past 10 years.
Almost 10 years. It's coming up to 9 years, but it will be 10 years in 2020. And that's the summit. There's the 6th summit, of course. The 6th National Development Summit will be on 2020. So 10 years it will be in 2020. Nice year to be 10 years. It depends on when you look, but in terms of monthly events, it will be, I've done since 2010, April it was, so celebrating the anniversary. Have organised events way before that in terms of, started off with Cashflow 101, Robert Kiyosaki. I never expected in any stretch to be organising events, years afterwards, and not, specifically property related. So it all started from... You
were doing Cashflow 101 games?
101, 202 as well, much more 101, and that began in about 2006, 2007.
Just so that everybody knows a little bit, what is Cashflow 101 and 202?
Well, to be fair, Cashflow 101 I've played a lot more. 202 I played less regularly. Cashflow 101 is like a sophisticated monopoly. It's created by Robert Kiyosaki, wrote the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it's a great opportunity for people to network as well. So it's not just purely playing a game. However, how people play the game is how people play in real life as well.
Right, exactly. So you got everybody into a room. They started playing the game. They were all kind of looking for financial freedom. They'd read the book, and you were the guy that would be able to bring everybody together into one place and get them to play with absolute strangers.
Well, I would say some people are there for curiosity as well.
Yeah.
There's always, we're curious in one way or another. And it's a great, thing to be curious as well, because it means you're learning. So, some people just want to see what's it all about. Cashflow 101. So it's a fantastic board game. If you've never had the opportunity to play, whether it's with my own groups, we don't play Cashflow 101 as often as we used to. At one point I played on a weekly basis, so it's not weekly, it's about bi-yearly. It's twice a year roughly. So it's a great opportunity.
Do you still do those events?
Yeah, so twice a year.
Twice
now.
a year. Okay, so we'll be looking out for those.
Just to on a tangent. So in
we haven't even done the intro yet.
Yeah, in 2010 when we did the I think it was 2009, 2010. We had a Cashflow one day event, and that's where we had also speakers as well, panelists, including the likes of John Corrie, who, I'm delighted is still involved in my events one way or another, hasn't spoken the last year or two, I'm sure, at some point fairly soon.
Yeah, he's great.
And at some point, hopefully, Sam, yourself as well.
One day. Let's see. And to keep moving on in just the intro, this is going to be an exciting interview, I can already tell. Brendan does have his ear to the ground, having been in the property space and around such successful property people overall, because you get to give a stage to all the people that have got some sort of fascinating story. And you've also begun to invest in certain
crowdfunding deals. Yeah, I have
yeah.
invested. I have to admit, most of my time is definitely spent on organising events, hosting, and also you're an expert in sourcing deals, Sam, I understand, or one of your specialities. In a way, I'm also sourcing, but sourcing some of the best speakers out there as well. So it's a different type of sourcing. And, one of the questions I'm sure we're going to cover is what makes a good speaker and what can make a good presentation as well.
Exactly, absolutely. And To go along with that, I mean, you're a pretty good speaker because you're extremely active on Facebook with regular updates as well as Facebook Lives. You do travel the length and the breadth of the country, going on site to meet some really cool developers, doing some cool
So
development
all the
opportunities.
way to Glasgow in January. Really huge thanks to Ross Harper. Been to Plymouth last year, saw Steve Colley, saw Murat Hacker. So I'm definitely open to travelling. I've been up to so many places I've forgotten now, to be fair, but I went up to see Stefan Canavan in Stoke, it was in about 2016, Northamptonshire. And I'm definitely open. Jane Joe Harding this year as well.
Wow,
And Evan MacDonald in Gloucestershire. And I've seen Evan's project in Kent a couple of times as well. So I'm definitely open to travelling because you learn lots of things as well when you actually go on site. Particularly, it's great when, people like Joe and Jane Harding sort of like open blank canvas. What would you like to know? And also, it's great to meet their teams as well. So sometimes you meet their teams on site as well.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think that you've probably been around the country looking at development sites a lot more than some of the investors that you might find on these kind of crowdfunding platforms that are investing in. But then the fact is that you also create an event where everybody can come and hear these guys speak and again create a platform for themselves to be able to expose what they're doing.
Things have changed, Sam, and to the listeners there as well. I had a brief opportunity to look at some of the questions coming up, and it's interesting. In 2006, 2007, there was no Instagram, no Snapchat, there was no Google Plus. Of course, no one really uses Google Plus now, or maybe some people still do. Snapchat, questionable. Instagram certainly started.
I came to one of your events actually. It had a guy that was an expert in Snapchat and social media marketing.
So
Do you use
Rob Lee.
it?
So do I use Snapchat specifically? Not at the moment.
Yeah,
not
me neither.
not
I
any
tried. There's
more.
just one too many things.
So look, I'm influenced as well by the people like Gary Vee, for example. Who's not.
Yeah.
Who doesn't listen to Gary? He's got a great reach. And I
Like
heard
4
him.
million followers on Instagram alone.
Yeah, so he does actually own Instagram, a part of Instagram as well, from my understanding.
He
So-
probably has shares or something, right?
Yeah, so it's interesting though, Gary, and listening to what he's got to say. I have to admit, I haven't really sussed out Instagram. It's a platform which I need to use a little bit more effectively going forward. It's not my love, in terms of pictures and
Which
so
is your
forth.
favorite social media platform?
So I prefer anything which is video related. So
Okay.
So
YouTube.
YouTube, yeah, I love listening to and podcasts as well. Whether it's property
Yeah.
podcasts, whether it's your own channel, Sam, or whether it's other property podcasts as well. So I listen to business podcasts as well. So
We were mentioning before this started Brian Rose and his
Brian Rose,
Miranda-
London Raw, yeah. So that's
listen
just
to-
one of many, though. I would say, I listen to ones which are focused on sport, and it's great when you can reach out to these people as well. So, for example, there's one in Australia which is called Effortless Swimming. So
You like swimming, right?
I love swimming, so yeah. So it's great when you can connect with these people and they ask or answer questions. So for me, I love listening to podcasts. It's such an easy thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Easy to do in terms of listening. In terms of the technical things, is a little bit more, particularly if you're creating the professional level, which you are, Sam.
Thank you very much, Brandon. I'm giving it my best shot anyway. And, well, for me, probably, I mean, everything you do is quite exciting, hence the reason why I thought it would be good for us to sit down and do this together. But for me, I've been 2 years in a row. You are the founder of the UK Property Development Summit.
Well, the actual title is the National Development Summit. I have to admit, to be fair, it wasn't me who came up with the title. So originally, I think it was called a Property Workshop. And that's okay, doesn't sound that exciting. And then it changed. I think it became the Property Summit. And then I spent some time with Aaron Yahara and talked about the word national put in front of it. And it does make a difference as well. So look, sometimes it's not myself who can come up with these great ideas. It's fantastic speaking to the likes of yourself, Sam, and there's other people who do influence what I do as well. It's not just my members. Of course, I speak to my members on a regular basis, my annual subscribers, but I also speak to a host of other people as well who sometimes are a little bit more creative, and we've got all different creative strengths as well.
Absolutely. You've got a great team around you, and from the last two summits that I've been to, it's a really well put together event, always some fantastic speakers, and the crew, I mean, I think I know 99% of them. They're always really, really good quality, thoroughbred property people, and I think that they are definitely a testament to what you've been putting together over the years. So, well, that's the intro. What a great intro. And Brendan, you know, you've been doing so many things up until now, and I think that the best place sometimes to start is from the very beginning, because I know that property always hasn't been the forefront of everything that you do, and I know that you are involved in other things as well. But rather than kind of go through a maze halfway through, let's start right from the beginning and go back to your school days and what you wanted to be when you grow up.
Well, that's a tough question. So what did I want to do? I've got a degree in politics, so
Okay.
So certainly interested and still interested in politics, and maybe I will go back to that at some point. So that's a degree in politics and history, and I love history, any type of history. So property never came to mind. I think the word first came to my mind in about 2004, 2005. And you mentioned I was one of the pioneers of property network, and I have to admit, I'd love to say I was. In the modern era, maybe. It goes back, and I have to admit, I don't know how far back it's gone, because there's no real property history in terms of property networking history. I love history, so, I'd naturally focus on history. I spoke to David Salmon, so David, who's, finance related in property, and he said he was going to a property networking meet in about 2004, 2005. And I said, what's that? And, because it's not obvious if you've never been, in any stretch. And the meet he introduced me to was Vanish Patel.
Okay.
Now, I love, Vanish still to this day. I spoke to him today. Words of wisdom, partly preparing for this.
Is that right?
Yeah, partly preparing for this podcast interview.
Vanish is a genius. I love him. He's
yeah, so it'd be great to hear him on the podcast as well at some point.
It's happening.
So I spoke to or attended Vanish, and I went to a number of different networking meets in about 2005, 2006. And Vanish says I'm probably the most networked person out there in terms of property. I'm not sure.
I agree with him.
I am. I'm certainly probably in the top 100, maybe, but maybe more than that.
I would say you're closer to the top 10 than you are the top 100, mate.
So look, in the last few years, running multiple property networking events. So just fast forward, and now I've solidified and focused on the central London. It's a great location, yards away from the Shard, easy to get to. I love Wandsworth as well, so that's where my property networking grew up.
That's right.
So nice, easy venue to get to. I don't like walking too far. And
it's easy for you to get to, isn't it?
It's easy for most people to get to.
I was living in East London all the time.
I would still say it's easy to get to. Just hop onto the train from Bank to Waterloo.
That's
takes
true.
about 4 minutes, and 14 minutes from Waterloo to Wandsworth Town, directly outside. So that's an 18-minute journey. Of course, you have to travel a little bit, walking in Bank Station and so forth.
Yeah.
It's not quite an 18-minute journey.
Do you still do the Wandsworth?
Wandsworth, yeah. And this year we've got the 9th year anniversary. Depends when you're listening to this podcast. So,
but what's the date of that 9th anniversary?
So the 9th anniversary is on the 10th of April.
10th of April. We will remind you of that before the end of the show, I'm sure.
I don't have my notes. Sam's taken my notes away. I have to admit, I didn't put them in the notes. But
I'm barely allowed notes on this.
It's interesting. The title of the presentation by Frederick Sandville It's called Investment Triangle. It goes on a bit,
Okay.
but the first part is a nice, catchy title, Investment Triangle. So it'd be interesting to hear from Frederick on the 9th anniversary on 10th of April. Just to go back, as I said, the inspiration for monthly events in terms of property. I wasn't eager to put on events in 2006 when I was it was great to go to them, and I still love going to property networking meets to this day.
Yeah, because this year I've seen you at a few other ones as well. So you genuinely have a love and a passion for it, and I think that comes through with all the ones that you put on.
I have to admit, Sam, this year I've gone to more than probably last year. I'm probably one of the
February.
What's that?
It's only end of February.
I know it's February. It's a good point. In last year, though, I had up to 3 monthly meets, or in fact, I had at one stage up to 4 because for my members, I had special sessions as well. So taking some meets away has freed up some of my time, given me a chance to see what other networking organisers are doing, seeing how and they're all different. None of us are really following a script.
So 2006 was your first property event.
Well, about 2006, 2007, Cashflow 101 specifically.
Right.
My first all-day event in terms of Cashflow, which we had property speakers, was in about 2009, 2010. And it may even have been a little bit earlier than that. And the likes of John Corrie was there in the early days of Cashflow. And John's a legend in property. I think he said his property networking group is 15 years old this year, which is a long time, to be consistently organising, hosting. And as I say, the market's changed, property market terminology's changed as well. Sam, you understand, property terminology better than most people, and you understand how it's changed as well, even in just the last couple of years.
Yeah, and John's amazing. John actually helped me do the kind of beta testing for this podcast. Safe to say I messed it up, so we're going to be doing another.
I wouldn't say you messed up. It was just a development.
It was definitely development. We just love property development. We love podcast development. We just generally love self development, all kinds of development. And yeah, John definitely helped me out with that one. And we'll be getting him back on. And he's a great guy, full of knowledge, experience, and he does also have a really good networking event to go to if you're looking at property stuff. So, so since 2006. You've grown to create the National Property Development Summit.
Well, the National Development Summit's only in the last, I think, 4 or 5 years, something like that. 2016 April. We had it twice a year initially, or 2016 June it was, and then 2017 twice, and then 2018 it was just once, and then so from 2018 it's just been on a single occasion on that year. And people say, why not have it more? Why not, And the thing is, it's about finding the quality of speakers. I don't want to make it an average event. Who wants to make you don't want to go to an average movie. You want to go to a fantastic movie.
100%.
So, and that's why it's not on every month or my property networking events. In fact, I've reduced the number of them, partly because I'm looking for fantastic people like yourself, Sam, to be involved in them.
Bless you. And you're going to actually MIPIM this year, aren't you?
I'm going MIPIM. I was there last year. I was on the boat with Ollie Lowry from Aqua Lowry, a plug for that architectural practice. For me, that was the highlight, actually, spending time with them. And to be fair, how they really hacked MIPIM. And if I follow tweets...
They hacked MIPIM?
In terms of
how did they do?
utilising, and I'll let them share the story. They may not use the words hacked, but they really skillfully got the benefits of MIPIM, of where they were located. Look, there's hotels which are right next to the conference centre, which charge thousands of pounds a night, and they were literally yards away from the conference centre. Lovely boat. And literally they weren't paying thousands of pounds a night.
Okay.
So it's not just that, but they skillfully, there's a few other people, possibly because I'm going, people know I'm going for the second year. And I do understand you've got to really be working hard. And it's not, in terms of
everybody
smart.
Everybody says that it's kind of like a big party.
You can say it's like a big party. I have to admit, I'm not a party guy. So why am I at MIPIM? Because I find it interesting still, just seeing how MIPIM organise it, seeing how people like. It's a great time to be aware as well, and just spending time with architectural practice, Ackroyd Lowry, possibly property TV. I might be spending some time with
that'd
as
be
well.
cool. Yeah,
Name dropping again.
there's going to be a lot of name dropping. I think we'll start as we mean to go on. But I think. Yeah, MIPIM, I've never been. I've only heard stories, but I've heard great things on both sides. I've heard the parties are absolutely great, but at the same time, the networking and the quality of the people that are is great. Not to mention the weather and the settings.
The weather and the setting is fantastic as well, and that, it's almost like that today, though. Here,
it's
where
actually
we
a little
are,
bit like
it's almost
Cannoneer.
like MIPIM weather.
So from 2006 to 2019, that's been the span of your property networking event journey. What's changed over that course of that time?
Well, that's a huge spectrum. Because first of all, I wasn't hosting or organising my own monthly property meets until 2010. So you could say I was gate crashing. Well, when you're not hosting, you're not gate crashing. And as soon as you're organising, you're gate crashing. I don't ever see it like that. Some people do. So 2006, in terms of attending events, 2005, the first people who attended were the likes of Vanish's event. And there was other people as well. Mike Wivey had a fantastic event. And just the energy in the room. And the co-host or the host can really provide that energy as well. So you can make a subject as interesting or as dull as you want to. And it's great was great hearing Mike and Vanish and other events as well. And I've been to events across the country as well, and just seeing what people are doing. So in terms of some key milestones, so 2010 April was the first monthly event. So you may say, so what? It's fine, 2010, but just to go forward a little bit. So that's pre-Instagram, for example. So I've got to adapt as an organizer. I've got to, and of course there's so many social media channels now, and you've got your own skill set as well. You've got your own interests. I love video. So for me, video is something which I do on a regular basis, whether it's something like Facebook Live, whether it's YouTube Live.
Yeah, so the marketing has kind of gone
marketing's
online.
Completely changed.
Right.
Yes, it's great to be featured in magazines as well. So huge thanks to Richard Bowser, editor of Property Investor News magazine. Name dropping there again. I know, Sam.
No, that's good. That's good. This is the Property People kind of podcast media, YouTube channel, and it's all about giving all of these people that have given so much to the industry to the next generation.
And I would say one thing which has changed in the last 6 months even is a decent website. So hand on heart, I had a website 2-3 years ago, which I wasn't pleased with, and I didn't promote. And now one of my sponsors, Connection, helped to create a fantastic website, which I'm definitely pleased with.
Well done.
And I can see it's actually working because people going online and then becoming a reader, subscriber through their email newsletter as well. So in just the last few days, a few more people. And I have to admit, I'm not using it actively as much as I could do in terms of the website because it's new to me. I use YouTube a lot, Facebook as well. So the marketing and events, literally it was just email marketing a few years ago, and it's a lot more than that now. Of course, when I'm marketing though, there's a few things I want to attract. Of course, I want to attract attendees to an event. I'm looking to attract sponsors, exhibitors, and I'm also looking to attract not the average speaker. We were discussing this a moment ago about the speaker on the circuit. I'm not saying they're average if they're on the circuit. They may not be. But it's just great to hear different people. I won't go through our conversation a few moments ago, but Sam was saying I've been listening to one of the upcoming episodes. A fantastic speaker potentially for me to listen to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I listen to podcasts as well. So I wouldn't say that's marketing as such. I listen to podcasts and I think Have they got an interesting story to share? Are they sharing? Is there something which I can take away from what they've actually shared on the podcast? And you know, if you can share something on a podcast, you can share it in a room as well. Of course, people may prefer a podcast interview to being in a room, or some people may prefer being in a room rather than, you know, just imagining people listening to you.
Well, I think that there's pros and cons with everything, and being in the room, you have the added bonus of being able to speak to the person directly when they've finished their talk, and you also get to speak to the people that are sitting next to you, and there's a wealth of experience, and yeah, there's pros and cons to everything. But one of the questions I wanted to ask you was, what is the best part of networking events, and why should people attend them? And what should they expect to get out of them?
So it's a good question. And one of the parts is about, you know, what makes a good network as well.
Yeah.
So last year at the summit, Evan came along, Evan McDonald, 2018, and so did someone who actually works for Evan now. I can't remember his surname, but Brendan's his first name. Another Brendan. So they connected at the summit, you know, and that's what networking is about. You know, it's not necessarily about deals, funding deals, or speaking to potentially people who can fund. Yes, that's great. Finding deals. It's also about in terms of going to the next level. In terms of sometimes I've almost seen the summit as a place of recruitment. Almost.
Right.
Not just for Evan, there's other people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think...
particularly on a whole day, so you actually get to possibly see the person in the morning, bump into them in the afternoon, and in the evening and late night. Because I know some people, even at the summit this year, people stayed until... Well, I stayed overnight. I was lucky enough to stay overnight. Some people...
Did.
Yeah, I did, because... personally, I think that's where the value of network is. It's not just in the room; it's also after the event finishes as well. Or sometimes
relaxes a little bit.
Yeah, or possibly even at the beginning of the day. So, you know, personally, I used to go to networking events quite early, not just property, also business, and it's a good chance to connect with the speaker before before 50 people wanted to get their business card, because literally often, if you go to an event prior to everyone else, you get a chance to speak to the speaker, or you may do.
And in terms of quality networking rules, I've heard that it's really important, if you do go to the event and you do take people's cards, you should always follow up, set up a 15-minute call, or do you do that with new attendees so that they can kind of hopefully one day subscribe to kind of a year's...
There's lots of things you should do. And do we always do the things we should? So I'll let you fill in the blanks. Yes, you should connect with the people. And it's not just about the people attending. It's also about who they're connected to as well. So, yes, they may not be your ideal target market, However, who are they connected to, and who are their connections connected
Right. So it's
to?
it's not about the person that's directly in front of you. It could be the person that they know that might be able to open a door or help you.
I understand people are time short. That's one factor.
Yeah.
And yes, we should all connect. Should give people phone calls. Literally the day after. Doesn't always happen. If someone's interesting, someone you're thinking, wow, that's an interesting story to share, then usually get on the phone that day or that the after. And it's important to be quite soon after, because you can have a chunk of business cards. I have to admit, I've got thousands of business cards, literally thousands.
Do you create a database with them all as well, or are you that organised yet?
It's a good question. So in terms of how do I like to connect, I like to connect on LinkedIn, for example.
Right.
Not everyone's on LinkedIn, Facebook as well. So
Which one do you use most, though? Because I think we mentioned Snapchat before earlier.
Snapchat, definitely not. So that doesn't mean I wouldn't
but
go
which is your favourite? Because I always like to know what people are on the most. We were having a chat about it earlier on.
It's interesting. What's the reach? And I look at the reach as well. I haven't got all the answers, Sam. I'd love to say I've got all the answers, but then I would be Gary V. And Gary may not say he's got all the answers either.
He wouldn't be here then either.
I don't know, Sam. We're here right now, yards away from the Olympic Park. It's a great location.
Exactly.
It's a place where things are moving.
Can we plug the studio that we're in, the Hoxo Media Studio? Very, very cool studios they're in.
Which studio is it, did you say?
The Hoxo Media Studios.
So, fantastic. So, literally going back to the point about,
Yes.
you know, what's my favorite platform. I saw, it's interesting, I test and measure like most marketers do. And whether I like to use the word marketer, I'm someone who's come from the marketing school, but never actually went to marketing school.
Right.
You know, I've done it from, you know, the street level.
You're
you could say.
self-taught, you watched all the videos, you've read all the books,
Yeah.
you followed the kind of gurus on it.
Although, you know, there's people who I do listen to who are marketers, you know, the likes of Andy Bardry, who recently became a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Marketing. So I have been to host a number of events. Maybe I will, at some point, become a member of that particular institute as well.
Because marketing is a large part of the whole networking thing. I mean, it's without marketing, to get all the people in one room, it's just, you know, difficult. You've got to get the message out there, right?
Well, it's about getting the message out there, not just about attracting the attendees, though. It's about attracting the speakers as well.
Right, yeah. So, you know, when we talk about why should people go to the best part of the networking is sometimes the value of the speaker and the knowledge that they're sharing that they wouldn't normally share if it was on a one-to-one because they don't have the time. But when it comes to speaking to maybe 10, 20 people in one room, they're kind of more keen to do that. And then they put slides up and they've got numbers to share and photos, stories.
I wouldn't say it's just that. It's also the most up-to-date, you know. Literally, podcasts are great. But if you want to hear someone speaking, and when they're speaking, literally a podcast could be a year old, could be 2 years old. You know, I don't know how long your fantastic podcast is going to go on for. Is it going to be like Joe Rogan? So
hopefully, that's the idea.
Yeah, that's the idea. So, in terms though of speakers when they're there, and I like listening to, you know, different formats. You know, Neil Patel. I don't know if you listen to Marketing School.
No, I don't know.
It's worth listening to. So it's a 7-minute chunk with, I think it's Eric Sue, and it's a fantastic. I think they've had 1 million downloads or 1 million visitors on their podcast, and
that's amazing.
yeah, so it is amazing. I just listen to them. I have to admit they don't have all the answers, you know, which I want. You know, sometimes they're giving information which is not relevant to myself.
Yeah.
However, sometimes it is as well. And I'm going to be at an event with Neil. Well, Neil's the speaker. I'm an attendee in March. So as far as I know, I'm going to be the attendee.
Well, it's always good to practice what you preach, and if you're going to be putting on the event, it's good to go out there as well as show support, but see how everybody else does it, because the fact is that there are more than just one brand of events. There's corporates, there's independents, and they all have some sort of value to give. And the fact that you get out there as well is a great example to everybody.
Just going back to the point, though, you were asking about, you know, how do you connect afterwards? It's great, you know, cool.
Yeah,
particularly when people, you know, John Corrie was one of the first I know to have a photo on his card, and I can understand the benefit of a photo on your card. Particularly when you go to someone's LinkedIn and you can't find them as well, it can be quite tricky. Sometimes you can have cards and you think, who was this person? So it does make a difference. And there is a theory, some people say, I don't carry cards. So, you know, that's great. If you don't carry cards, you get the card off the other person. But then imagine both of you've not got the cards. Look, just a tip to give. I saw it from another tweet online a few days ago. It was about MIPM and how to get the best from MIPM. It said, if you run out of cards, at least take a picture of your card so you can have it on your phone as well.
Or what I do is I just get the notes on my iPhone, and then I just give the phone to them and say, please put your full name, email address, and telephone number, and I'll drop you a line. And normally you can find them on LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff as well. But in terms of the platform that you've created for many a prominent property professional, you've got some pretty impressive names on there. I mean, would you care to share with some of those people that have kind of seen some great success since the days that you've allowed them to be?
In terms of events, for a period of time I was running business networking events and property networking, and then I've just gone purely to the property networking. So there are lots of recognisable names there, the likes of Nicole Bremner, Martin Skinner, Paul Higgs. You know, and also organisations like Metro Bank have spoken, UPAD. And in the early days, like when I was organising events which came under London Technology Week. I think I was one of the first to create an event which was geared towards property and tech in the UK. Came under the Mayor's office, that particular event. We had the likes of Move Bubble, and Move Bubble you can see all across London now, the advertising on almost anywhere, buses and tubes. So
what is Move Bubble? I don't know what that is.
it's a bit like a spare room platform.
Okay.
So spare room spoken for me as well.
Is it? Okay.
So host of tech events or
brilliant.
prop tech companies have spoken at my events. Funders, lenders, likes of Lend Invest. I mentioned Metro Bank a few moments ago. Lend Invest, I think Move Bubble, Land Insight were on one of the panels I did in about 2014. That particular panel. So look, there's lots of names, and sometimes it's not the famous names, which is great to hear as well, because people got their own perspectives, and sometimes you don't hear people too often, but it's great to bring them in. For example, I think Tony Egan a couple of years ago came in and did a short presentation on how to work with contractors.
And I'm quite excited to come to your event on Thursday, this coming Thursday.
Yeah.
You've got quite an interesting speaker.
Jack Jiggins. So look, what interests me first of all, last October, people kept saying you must meet Jack. Yeah. So I thought, okay, yeah, that's good. Good sign when people say you must keep meeting. And I did a video with Jack, and literally 20 minutes, I couldn't stop Jack speaking, because some people, literally 2 or 3 minutes is hard to get a conversation flowing, but Jack had so much information at such a young age as well, and humble as well, so
he's down to earth.
So that's what's great about Jack. I've been on site to see what he's doing.
You've already been on site?
Yeah, of course.
I haven't seen this stuff yet firsthand, but that's cool.
So pioneer of the new developers which are going to be here, and hopefully whether it's through the likes of crowdfunding, of course, biased, I'm sponsored by a crowdfunding platform.
Which crowdfunding platform?
Crowd with Us. So they came in quite a couple of years ago. They it was themselves who discussed it initially, would you be interested in us being a sponsor of your monthly meets, and then Ronald Fletcher Baker came in. And then, since then, a prop tech company called Connection as well.
That's right. I mean, you and all of these have a very prominent space in the property circuit right now, because they've been sponsoring your events, and you're such a prolific.
I think it's a number of factors, which make my events marketable for them as well. One, I have speakers who provide knowledge. They're not there to necessarily sell the dream every time. It's also the reality.
I think you had Paul Higgs at the Property Development Summit, and he's quite candid with his comments.
Quite candid, to say the least. So yeah,
which is great though, because everyone needs a dose of reality when they've maybe had the kind of a lot of marketing done to sell certain courses that might give you the idea that you can pop a pill and be super successful overnight. It's great to have people like that have been there, done that.
Yeah, it's great to have the likes of Paul who've got vast experience.
Yeah.
It's hard to put down one or say one speaker. That was the best one speaker I've ever had. Yes, there's people shine out. The likes of Nicole Martin, particularly since looking at what Nicole's done on her, become a micro influencer. The vast way she's used.
I mean, she's
social media, for example.
I think she's definitely probably from the people that you mentioned most prominent on social media and doing the best on that. Which actually comes on to my next question, which is, who's the most memorable speaker that you've had?
And that is so tricky.
And why? Well, I mean, surely one comes to mind where you...
When you've had over 200 speakers, I must have had in the region of 200 speakers. I think I was working out the other day when I was at an event which was Brian Rose. And,
right.
I think it was Brian who mentioned it, or maybe it was a different speaker. Oh, it was a different speaker at the same event, Best You. And the organizer was saying how many speakers he's helped promote over the last, how many years he's, and a similar number for me. And so that's why it's so tricky to say there's one speaker. And of course, they're all listening to this, So it's going to be a little bit unfair to say there was one. So if they weren't listening to this,
okay, not favorite, not most memorable. Name me, of the top ones, which one you were inspired by, or that that had a really positive impact from some of the feedback that you got from the people in the room.
Well, put it this way, right? And it's a good question about
it's a compliment to the people that you do mention in the end.
In terms of last year's summit, 2018, the presentation which had the most cards for, the most requests for, have you got a business card?
Oh, right.
Was Ronald Fletcher Baker Solicitors.
Right.
The presentation on planning. In 2019, at the National Development Summit, the speaker who I got the most feedback for, conversation-wise, it's not, asking every attendee, but in terms of conversations, was Stuart Scott. So Stuart's a double award winner, and in terms of inspiration, of course, Stuart's an inspiration, particularly when I've gone down to Brighton twice already last year to see what Stuart's up to, and seeing the growth in Stuart, even in a period of 6 months as well. So, look,
he's done some great stuff. Co-living spaces. Stuff,
people. I ask people who do they want to hear, and the name comes up against Stuart, so you can see the interest level. And it'd be great to hear Stuart on a podcast like yours as well.
One day, hopefully, once he's been at one of your, has he done one of yours?
He's
apart from the.
He's presented at the Wandsworth Property Network last October, and he presented at the summit as well.
Fantastic. And in terms of, you said
I know that's not quite answered your question, but hopefully
that's good enough.
Yeah,
it's diplomatic, but at the same time gives some people some good names of other people that they can go out of more recent times as well, which is fantastic. In terms of the advice you would give to future speakers, so sometimes you can get a little bit of egg on your face if you do a crappy presentation. I'm sure you've seen the best and the worst and everything in between. What would you say, what would your advice be, or what suggestions would you have for somebody that was going to take the stage and do a presentation? What sort of things would you advise them to do, or what would you like to see them do?
So, look, there's lots of things, and we could go for a whole lesson in that. And I'm not an expert, I don't speak a lot myself, so it's interesting speaking to those who do speak. I'm much more of an organizer than a speaker in terms of property events. So, for example, PowerPoint, you've taken my notes away. But in terms of PowerPoint, putting too much information in one slide. Sorry. So some people say you should put 7 words in one slide and no more than that. Maybe
7 words in one slide.
One slide, maybe more. But if you have too much information in that PowerPoint slide,
I agree with you on that.
And within the first 2 minutes, you can identify if it's going to be an interesting presentation or not. I have to admit, last week I went to PPN Canary Wharf, and Richard, hopefully I get his surname right, Wanwell, did a really interesting presentation without PowerPoint. And I have to admit, it was one of the most interesting presentations I've ever seen. Unconventional, to say the least, without PowerPoint. Engaging.
Oh, wow.
No PowerPoint.
Do you see that often, or is that one off?
No, I've seen that quite a few times.
Right.
Some speakers prefer working without PowerPoint. Now, the only thing is, if you're working without PowerPoint, where's the visualization? So people think in different ways, visually, auditory, kinesthetic. So Richard was great in that sense, because what he did, he had his, 2 flip charts, not 1, but 2 flip charts. So there's a visual impact already. Because if you're a speaker, you're speaking. There's different ways to create visual impact, but that does make a difference as well.
Yeah, and I think I definitely agree with you with the PowerPoint presentation not having more than 7 words.
That can be quite tricky, having too much information is the key thing, rather than just 7.
You might be sitting at the back of the room and you're never going to be able to see all the small print. It looks great on a laptop, but when you put it up in front of everybody, sometimes the room might only have like a widescreen TV. And I think that people have got to be more careful on what they put on their slides. Too much, it's never advisable.
Sometimes too much is not good,
Yeah.
So look, people use props as well. you could argue that Richard was using a prop, those flip charts, but putting them two together. I've never seen. Okay, the likes of Tony Robbins put two together as well, I'm sure, but it's slightly different format Richard used as well.
And in terms of your property development summit, the National
Development Summit.
National Development Summit, it's getting bigger and better every year. What would you like to see, or what's your ambition with it?
That's a good question. And look, I'm going to be at MIPIM in March, and just interesting to find those speakers, those interesting stories. I know Evan's going to co-host the next one with me in 2020, so we're going to sit down at some point when Evan's back from his holiday and literally go into detail and just think about how can we take it to the next level. And it's about taking it to the next level. And what does that mean?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's a good question. It's an open-ended question as well, because people want different things.
Yeah.
You know, the market's changed, so I can't really say who's speaking yet. Won't really comment on the topics as such. However, in terms of creating that vision, you asked about the vision for the summit. Yeah. I see it as one of the key places people have in their diary for the year.
Because you've positioned it quite cleverly at the beginning of the year, because it gives everybody an idea of what's happened in the previous year and an insight into what could be coming for the following year. So I think that's really well done. And
I have to admit, you know, initially when I had it in January, I think one of the turning points was January 2018 was when January 2017 it was, I think it was now. It was going to be where it was originally in June 2016, a nice pub, but the pub was limited space, you know, the function room, and therefore literally had to move it to a hotel. And so that's where it really changed. It changed from the second event onwards.
So one of the final questions that I wanted to ask you was about the property networking events, and something that I've noticed. I've only been frequenting the networking circuit for property since January 2017. The first event that I ever went to was a PIN event in Canary Wharf. And then I met a lot of people there, and they kind of led me to other events and recommended other people's events we should go to. And I've also noticed in that time, in this last 2 years, that a lot of events have started and stopped. Some, you know, got really far. Some have grown. Some have not done so well. Mm-hmm. If somebody, I know that there's a lot of budding property people out there wanting to get themselves out there and start their own property event, or anybody in the event space. I mean, what would you advise those people to do? What's the best advice you could share for those people wanting to start their their networking events?
Look, a conversation I had with someone else was about what Vanish said to them. So maybe slightly wrong, and this is another question you can ask Vanish. But it was about having your speakers lined up in advance. And I think with Vanish, I think he said first year or maybe first 12 months of the property networking. And it's great to have that because it gives you an added confidence as well. It's not an easy thing to do, not easy to organize. When I say not easy to organize, it's more about the fact that there's so many meets, so many different avenues. There's podcasts, for example. Yeah. You've got YouTube channels. You've got the likes of magazines. We mentioned briefly Property Investor News magazine. You've got your property network as well, I think it's called, or your property magazine. Look, there's webinars. So there's a vast array of ways for people to get knowledge. Of course, networking is slightly different. And in terms of why do meets survive, why do meets thrive, a lot of it is down to the organizer at the end of the day, because we're all, have the ability for events to thrive. It's really how great is your vision. And, the vision does involve not just who your sponsors are, exhibitors, also who your speakers are as well. Are you attracting the right speakers to match your delegates?
Okay, so it boils down to the organizer, how good they are maybe with themselves, having organizational skills and getting people to help them, getting their speakers lined up. and getting them maybe in an order where they have some sort of value to add to the audience. So if you're going to get somebody that's maybe just done buy-to-lets 2 months in a row, that's probably not a good idea. You've got to kind of...
It's great to hear, though, newer speakers as well. You know, speakers who've, you know, literally, you know, new property award winner, for example. So last year, you know, that was one of the awards at the Property Investor Awards, I think it was. So it's great to hear from the newbies and the old bees, or the older ones, because they've all got different things to share. So it's about the organizer getting the most from the speaker, really, and the, you know, the speaker sharing as well. So look,
what about things like putting on food and drinks?
Yeah, you know, that's one element you can consider. But what's the most important thing for people?
Or location.
I would say location is a key one. It's really important to be, well, we say that, you know, really centrally located. However, some events could be in the middle of almost nowhere, and you still have people because there's something about that event they want to go to.
Yeah, absolutely. So
you could tick all the boxes about location. It's like a property could be the best location, but someone actually prefers somewhere a little bit different, and there may be a different reason why.
Exactly. And then, I mean, have you noticed any big... I mean, you mentioned actually a little bit of a difference between the hotels and like the more casual pub setups. Does being in a hotel make it a little bit more formal?
To some people they do, and you know, there's religious beliefs as well. So some people may not go into a pub for religious beliefs.
Okay.
So you know, yeah, there's different things which come to mind. Some people prefer hotels, some people prefer pubs. At the end of the day, some people are just there for the actual speaker, some, you know, for the event itself.
And so so I think.
But just going back on the question, Sam, you mentioned about speakers as well, and what can they do? So one thing which they can do is the timing. You know, is their presentation the actual time which, you know, is supposed to be?
So in terms of in the year or in the event?
No, in the event. And one thing which they can do is literally video themselves giving the presentation from A to B or A to Z. So that's just one useful tip which I've heard from other people.
So they should. So this is going back to an earlier question. But that's a good point you make, because they should be practicing themselves, videotaping themselves to see how they're doing their presentation, to be able to see whether it comes across right within the time frame that they're normally set, because they're normally given how much time they're normally given?
Well, it depends. Sometimes it can be 25, sometimes 50, sometimes a little bit shorter. But whatever time scale, you know, to be within that time, it does make a difference to an event organizer. It's just like the example we saw the other day of, it's a little bit too far, but the Chelsea player who wouldn't come off.
I never saw that. What was that?
Oh, you didn't see that? The Chelsea goalkeeper who refused to come off the pitch.
Refused to get substituted.
Substituted. You didn't hear that? No. It's not quite that far, you know, but there's an element to it.
Very good. Well, Brendan, honestly, I could sit here and talk to you all day about property,
particularly in the sunshine as well. This venue is amazing today.
God bless you, Brendan. Thank you ever so much for joining us here at the Hoxo Media Studios. What I want you to do before you go, though, is let us all know how we can contact you. Should we want to follow you?
I think the easiest way is literally visit my website, which is bquinevents.com. So it's got details of how to connect with me there, whether it's on Facebook or Twitter, LinkedIn. There's an active blog as well, or as active as I've got at the moment. I'm interested if you've got something to share on the blog.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got an interesting article, or if you've got an interesting story to share as well.
So on the website, but you are on Facebook.
You'll find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook Live, YouTube Live. So all those channels.
Just look for Brendan Quinn.
Brendan Quinn.
And in terms of the events, so you've got the Wandsworth, you've got the Central London.
Well, most of the focus this year is on the Central. So Central London takes place normally on the fourth Thursday of the month.
Fourth Thursday
of the month. Yards away from the Shard. Beautiful hotel. And nice bar as well. Some people prefer the bar to the, you know, where, you know, and you get people staying there
London
late.
Bridge Hotel.
Yeah, London Bridge Hotel.
This Thursday.
Yeah, this coming Thursday. Tickets are just £20 per person.
So you're about to tell us a nice story about the bar there.
I was going to say, well, some people just spend hours there after the event as well, because it's such a nice, relaxing bar, yards away from the station as well, from London Bridge. It's easy to get to. As we were talking about how ease of access, and find out more from bquinnevents.com.
And the Wandsworth one?
Wandsworth one is less often this year. It's gone quarterly. So had a January event, April, which is the 9th year anniversary. As I mentioned, Frederick Sandfield, one of the guest speakers that night.
Excellent.
So that's at the Crown Plaza, Battersea, and then in July and September as well.
And the next national
Development Summit.
Development
You're going to ask me the date?
When is the next one?
2020, January, 18th of January. Venue's not confirmed yet, so literally just watch this space.
Well, this has been fantastic. We've had a lot of name dropping, which I expect nothing less from probably one of the most, I agree with Vanish, networked people in the property space. Thank you very much for joining us today, Brendan.
I really enjoyed the opportunity to share. So, huge thanks. I know Nicole's spoken to me about being on a podcast as well, so it's great to be on your platform as well.
Great. Will you join us again?
Definitely.
A year from now, and see
definitely
how the
love to join you, whether it's pre-summit or post-summit.
And I hope you bring back the weather from Mipham when you go.
I hope so as well. We've got the weather here though as well today.
Cheers, Brendan.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us, and see you next time.